The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And the murder rate, you can't keep saying violent crime is down, but the murder rate's up. To the average person, the murder rate's about life and death. You don't brag about a rising murder rate. And the Democrats are, I agree with you, Mika, they're falling into the trap of defending what's indefensible.
It's a trap. Yes, it's a trap. I mean, if it's not a winner politically to say, oh, you're wrong, look at the data. Because, you know, if one violent crime happens in a very heavily populated part of the city, people hear about it, and it's visceral. They don't want it. And they'll gravitate to the person who appears to be doing something about it.
I walk around all the time. I wake up early in the morning sometimes and take a nice walk as the sun is rising around some of the Capitol and the other monuments and things, and I feel perfectly safe.
It's important to point out that Senator Schumer, like congressional leaders from the Republican Party, also have security details with them full-time while they are here in D.C.
I think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way, way, way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to admit.
As you can tell from our opening gambit here with audio, the takeover of law enforcement by the federal government in Washington, D.C. is still a hot topic. There are others. One of the things that should scare Democrat Party tremendously, is a report that came this afternoon, or I'm sorry, late this morning. And, Carlos, I'm going to ask you to just grab 14 really quick. And this report ought to have Democrats shaking in their boots.
Meanwhile, President Trump is directing the Justice Department to investigate Act Blue. This is a Democratic donation platform. And the focus as the allegations about illegal straw donors and foreign contributions. Mark Meredith is live in Washington with more. This has been brewing for a while, Mark. What do we need to know?
Dana, for years, you're right about this, but this is a big development. The White House is directing the Attorney General to investigate the Democratic Party's top fundraising platform. It's called Act Blue, and the president says he wants to know if foreign money is being donated to the group and then utilized to sway elections. Democrats are calling this probe a dangerous abuse of power. Act Blue is an enormous operation in Democratic politics. It's raised more than $16 billion since 2004. You may have seen the text pop up from candidates saying, please donate, go to the Act Blue website. Republicans use something similar called Win Red. There was a new memo signed on Thursday directing the Attorney General to investigate if foreign nationals are using the Act Blue platform to bypass campaign finance laws. Trump wants a report out in 6 months.
This ought to have Democrats quaking, and it probably does. Of course, you are going to hear a lot of criticism that this is using the DOJ for political purposes, but there have been so many reports of shady dealings by Act Blue. This will allow the Justice Department to do a full discovery of what they are, if they are hiding anything, and if not, okay, they should get a clean bill of health. But I guarantee you, this has people on the political left upset. Now, you also heard during the open, you heard three voices there. One was Mika Brzezinski, Chris Matthews. Democrats are falling into a trap with the crime thing. Chuck Schumer declaring he feels safe in Washington, D.C., only after that quote, gentle reminder, yeah, well, he has security while he's in D.C. He has a security detail, as do the leaders of both political parties. And, of course, then we turn to CNN's Harry Enton, who talked about the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on crime. Now, that is cut 12. I would like you to play that again, Carlos, because I have a particular reason why.
think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way, way, way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to admit.
Now, that may be true in 2024, but that was not always the case. And so, my friends, I would like to spend part of today's time going into a time machine. Because the Joe Biden that we saw, the feeble Joe Biden, was a lot more spry 30 years ago. And I want to remind everybody where the nation was 30 years ago on this issue that we are seeing manifest today. Bill Clinton was in the White House. And one of the things that came with Bill Clinton in the White House was an emphasis on crime. And Joe Biden, before we pick up here, Joe Biden was on the Senate floor bragging about how he and Clinton had talked 6 times, not through any intermediaries. Joe Biden had talked to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton called him and kept pushing for legislation dealing with crime. Democrat Bill Clinton. And on the Senate floor, as the bill was being debated, we have 4 cuts. We're not going to be able to get them all in straight, but we are going to play each and every one of them because this will show you where the Democrat Party, the emphasis was 30 years ago, and you contrast to what you are hearing Democrats say today. Cut 1, Carlos, let us begin with this.
In the old days, it is true, when Richard Nixon was running for president, Richard Nixon used to talk about law and order, and the Democratic response was law and order with justice, whatever either one of those meant. I never knew. I was running then in 1972. I didn't think Richard Nixon knew what it meant, and I didn't think the opposition knew what it meant. This president is very, very straightforward and simple. He knows there are 2 basic steps here. One step is you must take back the streets. And you take back the streets by more cops, more prisons, more physical protection for the people. He also understands what my friend from Texas understands, and he doesn't talk a lot about, but he signed on to in this bill. He also understands there's a need to keep people who are first-time offenders, who are nonviolent offenders, or who are potential time offenders who haven't gotten, I yield myself an additional 3 minutes, who, in fact, are people who are getting themselves into the crime stream for the first time, that they should be diverted from the system. So I hope this crime bill, when it passes, the Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended, once and for all, this notion that is a hangover from the 60s, that somehow Democrats are weak on crime and Democratic presidents are weak on crime and Republicans are tough on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill. So, according to Joe Biden, the hangover from the Democrats being soft on crime was over in 1994. That is 30 years ago. There was a guy on the radio then that was following this and talking about this stuff, by the way, and talking about how Democrats were still soft on crime. And that was having a lot of impact on this debate that was occurring in Washington, D.C. Let us continue with Joe Biden, then a senator from Delaware, talking about the crime bill at that time. One of the things I want to do in addition to ending crime is end the political carnage that goes on when we talk about crime. Crime is not Democrat or Republican. Really? Making the streets safe is not a Democratic or Republican issue. This is one of those issues I hope this passage of this bill will do, will be taken out of the gridlock category and moved into an emerging consensus. And the consensus is as follows, and I will cease when I finish this statement.
He won't, but...
The consensus is, A, we must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that.
So, according to Joe Biden back then, does this sound like the same guy who open the borders to let criminals pour in from everywhere, every part of the world? Does this sound like the Democrats today demanding and out there? There's a guy from the DOJ. He worked at the DOJ until this morning, wearing a pink shirt yesterday in Washington, D.C., yelling at law enforcement, calling them fascists, et cetera, et cetera. He gets so angry, he threw his sandwich. It was from a Subway. He threw his Subway sandwich and hit one. He's under arrest now. Turns out he worked for the Department of Justice. He did. Pam Bondi fired him today. Does it sound like the same Democrats? We must take back the streets. Right now, one president is standing saying the same thing that Joe Biden said 30 years ago. And the reaction from the mainstream press, the reaction from the Democrat Party is sheer and utter hatred. And Joe Biden was saying this on behalf of the president of the time, who was closely working with them. The Yoda of politics, Bill Clinton. This is how far the Democrats have traveled from the lane that they were in 1994. We are going to take a quick break here, so we have time for a change on the other side, and we can play some more of Joe Biden and where Democrats were then. Anyway, we got to take a quick break. Yes?
I told you yesterday it's Michael Jackson over the Beatles.
Michael Jackson over the Beatles. You said that yesterday. Yeah, yes, you did, Carlos. For you. James Golden, Snerdley, don't go away.
The Rush Hour with James Golden on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
On the fastest hour in American media, we have played two selections from Joe Biden's speech on the Senate floor back in 1993, promoting what would become the 1994 crime bill 30 years ago. Joe Biden, got to clean the streets, got to take back our streets. I don't care. Don't tell me about what caused these people to be the way they are. They're criminals. Now let's listen to Joe Biden continue his speech on the Senate floor November 18th, 1993.
There's a second thing that we all have agreed upon, and that is, unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And, Madam President, we have predators on our streets. that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. You're looking at the fellow who was one of the primary architects of the Sentencing Commission. You know what the basic premise of the Sentencing Commission is? I know the presiding officer knows. It was the first time in 80 years we rejected the notion that the condition of sentencing must be related to how long it would take to rehabilitate. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time.
That was Joe Biden then. Democrats then. We have to get these predators off the streets, the young ones. We don't want to hear about their background, what caused it. We don't care. Get, as Joe Biden said, these people out of society. We'll be back. James Golden, fastest hour in American media continues. Please be here for it.
The Rush Hour with James Golden on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rush Hour with James Golden, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Nobody was going to tell me that there's a nationwide pause on food stamps. I went to go get a sub because I'm like, hey, they hit today. Oh, sorry, decline. I'm calling the number. They say I got the money. Oh, it's decline. I went to another store. I see this lady. She's using her food stamps. Decline. I'm like, oh, so it's not just me. Pulled up on TikTok saying there's a nationwide pause. Why wouldn't they put it on the app? I checked the app. They didn't tell people that there was a pause. They didn't say anything. And then now I hear that you can't buy candy, ice cream, or soda. So if I wanted some Ben & Jerry's, I can't get that either. How? Like, how? Why? My question is why?
Because you should be getting a job and getting what you want instead of... Oh, why? James Golden is Snerdley with you. We have been revisiting Joe Biden and this speech that he made upon trying to get the crime bill of 1994 passed. Now, to review, one of the things Joe Biden said, we have to take the streets back. And I'm summarizing things you've heard. We got to take the streets back. There is a consensus among Democrats and Republicans. Crime is not a Republican or Democrat issue. It's an issue of safety for Americans. So we don't care. We don't care. The criminals. We don't care about their impoverished backgrounds, about all the other feel-good stuff. I'm paraphrasing here. If they are going to hurt people in society, we have to take them off the streets. We can't have them as part of society. We have to remove them from society. He said these people, and I'm not going to read into what he meant by these people or sound like those people. But he did say they would become future predators. And we can't have the predators attacking our families. We have to take back the streets. And then he went on to say, and don't talk to me about this rehabilitation stuff, because nobody knows how rehabilitation happens, when it happens, when we sentence people, never mind sentencing them from this idea that it takes this long to be rehabilitated, because we don't know. Sentence people based on the crimes they committed and what's a fair sentence for them then. And finally, in part 4 of this revisitation of Joe Biden, Democrat, wanting to be president someday himself, working with Bill Clinton. This is how Joe Biden wrapped things up on his big speech to push through, and it was successful, along with Orrin Hatch from Utah, Republican, that crime bill became law, and this is how Joe wrapped up the speech back then.
It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist. And we must deal with that. And I think there's a consensus among Republicans in that. Old barbed wire Republican conservatives just want to hang them high. Even those folks are saying, hey, we got to deal with the root cause of this. Not one or the other, but separately. And liberal Democrats who used to say, let's look at the sociological underpinnings of why this occurred, and we have to, they're now saying, hey, look, we got to take back the streets. We'll make that fight later. So there is a consensus. I hope the remainder of the discussion as we close out the debate in this bill, we can end that old fight. We can put it behind us. Hopefully we have, the senator from West Virginia said this is a historic moment on this bill. A consensus being reached. I think it is, but I think it's a historic moment for a political reason as well. Hopefully we will end the discussion about whether or not Republicans are Neanderthal and only want to hang them high, and Democrats are wacko liberals and only want to look at the causes.
Well, that discussion, my friends, did end for a little while, but then what happened? I will tell you what happened because I remember what happened. The crack epidemic went in full play. This was all part of it. This was a response to some of the crack epidemic. But then the sentencing that this bill brought in helped bring the crack epidemic to a close. You want to know why? Why? Because people start going to jail. And a lot of people start going to jail under this crime bill. And guess what happened? Crime did start to ebb down. But Democrats weren't happy. And what do Democrats do when they're not happy? They start calling race. And soon, out of the leftist camp of Democrats unhappy that a crime bill was passed, we started hearing new words pop into the American lexicon. New words like mass incarceration. And Democrats who proudly, and we saw this play out over a 20-year period leading up to 2016, you saw this play out. All of a sudden, Democrats who proudly stood with Bill Clinton started backing away from the ideas that Bill Clinton and the left promulgated. In other words, they stopped sounding like Joe Biden when it came to crime. That consensus that they talked about disappeared like a thief in the middle of the night. It disappeared. And then you started hearing things like, whoa, this is racist. Hillary Clinton, who also, like her friend Joe Biden, used to talk about the predators in the street, the predators that became the predators in 15 years. The people that Joe Biden just got through talking about there when we heard him didn't have no data at home, came from broken homes, didn't have no social connection with being law-abiding people. They weren't taught that. They weren't conditioned to follow the law. They were little miscreants out there from almost the time they were born till the time that they turned into full-scale predators. And we got to put them people away. These people can't live among us. All of a sudden, Democrats start changing their tune. It was no longer cool to talk about the super predators and the predators, let alone. In fact, Hillary Clinton herself became a target of the left. People dug up old Hillary talking about them super predators, and when it was time for her to run against Barack Hussein Obama, the black guy, they said, Democrats said, wow, this is the woman that she was using code language against black people, calling them predators. And they started trying to put that racial divide right in between her and Barack Obama, the black savior who was going to clean everything up in America and just reverse all them years of oppression. And people like Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden snuck in on that ticket with Obama, but you notice Joe Biden wasn't out there running when it was his turn. He wasn't out there talking about predators anymore. He wasn't out there talking about the need to free society from people that might beat his mother in the head with an iron pipe. He wasn't talking about the fact he didn't care about the life history of these people, those people who are the predators that we have to keep out of society. No, everything changed. All of a sudden, the talk was about how America is systematically and institutionally racist because some of the criminals that they put away in mass incarceration happen to be black. And those sentences that Joe Biden got pushed through with that crime bill, why they were discriminatory because black people that were selling crack, mainly to other black people, why they shouldn't be punished. And that is the position of the Democrat Party when it comes to black crime. Please let black criminals alone. According to the Democrat Party, they are our pride and joy, and we want them terrorizing and killing black criminals off the street like you do any other criminals. You have a whole chorus of so-called black leaders who stand up and demand that the black criminals be freed so that they can terrorize black communities all over again, and it's still happening to this day. And if I'm lying, I'm flying. Carlos is looking at me like, have you lost your... No, if I'm lying, I'm flying. This is exactly what black people have had to put up with from the Democrat Party. Anybody that stands up and demands that black kids be educated and that put down this foolishness that's in the media, that glorifies this gangster life. Anybody that stands up and says we should not be tolerating black criminals in black neighborhoods. Anybody that stands up and says we should treat black people like they are equal, and when they deserve to be criticized, criticize them equally. Anybody that stands up from that kind of stuff is vilified. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I have an article here. Mayors of Democratic cities respond to Trump's threats they could be next after D.C. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. Trump said Monday, we have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And, of course, you have Baltimore, Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They've gone so far. And then from this, the NPR, the mayors of those cities, all of whom are black, and Democrats have pushed back against Trump in recent days, pointing to data that shows crime is down in their communities. Crime is down. That is what they're saying. Crime is down. So once again, let us return to where we started with the top of this show and cut number 5, because Democrats are saying that all of crime is down. Crime is down in these cities.
And the murder rate, you can't keep saying violent crime is down, but the murder rate's up. To the average person, the murder rate's about life and death. You don't brag about a rising murder rate. And the Democrats are, I agree with you, Mika, they're falling into the trap of defending what's indefensible.
It's a trap. Yes, it's a trap. I mean, if it's not a winner politically to say, oh, you're wrong, look at the data. Because,
well, if you don't think that's let's look at Eli Honig, who is the senior legal analyst for CNN. That would be cut 9. And let's listen into what old Ely said.
So I've worked extensively with police, and I don't have a problem tactically with what Donald Trump is doing here. He doesn't have to be the most dangerous place on earth. Something can be improving, but still really bad. If your house is on fire, and then a third of the fire goes out, it's less bad, but it could still be an emergency. I work in D.C. It is dangerous there. You cannot deny that. And a common police tactic is to surge resources. I've been we call them task forces. They're applauded across the board, across the political board. I've done it in New Jersey. I've done it in New York. You take the FBI, you team them up with the Newark PD, what have you. You make a visible presence. Now, is some of it for appearance and show? Yes, because what it does is A, it assures people. It gives people a bit of confidence and security, and B, it deters people from committing crime. So it's not going to hurt, and this is a situation that needs to be improved. I don't see why there's and I also reject the January 6th. Look, I've been a 100% unambiguous critic of everything Donald Trump did on January 6th. I believe he should have been charged criminally. I believe the pardons were a disgrace. But why does that mean he can't do anything now to enforce the law to promote public safety?
I think it raises questions about the
Sure,
sincerity.
he's a hypocrite. Fine, he's a hypocrite.
But this is all political theater. None of this is going to fundamentally address the crime problem in D.C.
Would you rather have national security out in D.C. where you work?
How about both local police and instead congressional Republicans cut
That's
the
Richie
DC budget
Torres.
by $1 billion?
The police union says he's right.
The DC budget by $1 billion undermines local police.
The police union says he's right. You saying the union is wrong?
Right on what?
That's
the police
Jimmy.
union came
All right,
out
enough of that. We heard
this.
the flavor of all that. And, of course, Democrats like Richie Torres still argue against it. They're still arguing. I wanted to get one other thing in. I want to get two other things. I want to get three other things in, but I don't have time to do all three. So I want to turn to Cut 6, Oakland Mayor Barbara Lee with Jake Tapper. Here's it, and here's it,
but
and here's it.
But let me just say also, it's not lost on
sister.
anyone that the cities that he is calling out, first of all, have large numbers of black and brown people. Secondly, the crime rate is going down in all of these cities.
Bullshit.
Thirdly, they're all headed by black mayors. Now, what does that say? What does that picture paint? So we all know who he is. Also, let me just say here in Oakland, for example, we have a...
All right, we all know who you are, Barbara. Okay, though usually there have been votes where this woman is so far left that she's been the only Democrat to vote against things going back to forever. She took the seat of Rod Red Dellums, and they used to call him Red Dellums for a reason out in California. Anyway, enough of that history. Yes, Donald Trump pointed to cities that all have a large black and brown population. Cities where crime is running rampant. By the way, that have a large brown and black population. Cities where the education is dreadfully failing, that have a large brown and black populations. And those cities happen to be run with faces who are black and brown. And I call them the faces of incompetence, who would like to shield their incompetence with the color of their skin. And that is not working anymore. You are incompetent. You have betrayed the trust of the people that rely on you for safety, and just because you're black doesn't make it, or brown doesn't make it all right. And so if you can't take the heat, then get out the freaking kitchen. This heat is real. People are dying by the scores in these cities. Generations of black and brown kids grow up uneducated, unable to take part in society, while you sit here and play the race card, and people are sick of hearing it. People are sick of seeing you play it. We gotta go. Here I am again, sounding a bit unhinged. Oh, gee, that man on the radio sounds quite unhinged today. James Golden and Snerdley, do not go away.
The Rush Hour with James Golden on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Benefits, we've already kicked nearly 275,000 illegal aliens off of the Social Security system. These are people, many of them have already left the country, and yet we were sending them checks all the time. And 275,000, and that number is now even larger than that, Frank. It's an unbelievable job. And what that's doing is making the system strong. It's making it strong.
Now, I don't know if I remember Democrats saying no illegal immigrants were on Social Security. 275,000 and upward kicked off. Okay. All right. You know what, folks? I'm just going to end with this thought before we say goodbye today. There is no other group in American history that I am aware of, no group, in fact, in world history, like black liberal Democrats who advocate that criminals be released to harm the people that elected them. I have never seen anything like this. I will never understand it. James Golden, Snerdley. We got to go. May God bless, protect each and every single one of you, your families, your loved ones. Love and gratitude always for your being here with me, allowing me to be with you. God willing, back tomorrow. Until then, my friends, I bid you adieu. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. You can hear Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour weekdays at 4 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?